Hello, everyone, and welcome to this fireside with Luis Vicente. He can be variously described, so I will not introduce him just as what his day job right now is. Luis, lovely to have you. I've got to say, coming from Singapore, a very warm welcome to you. Hope you're well.
Thank you, Amish. Pleasure to be here, and greetings, everyone, and thank you for watching us today. I hope we will give a good show to all of you.
Excellent, fantastic. Here's my first question to you. What is the former football agent of Ronaldo, the first Ronaldo? The first Ronaldo, and Figo and Shevchenko. What's he doing in the media world? And what was those?
Yeah,
Take us back to those days. What was it like being an agent, and what's been the journey like?
that's a good question, Amish. Again, it's been a long time ago. Again, I've been in the sports business in multiple shapes and forms for 28 years. Of course, I was an important agent on that golden generation. I'll say that the first generation of footballers that understand the power that they have, outside the pitch, and of course, some of them were part of also, the basically the Harlem Globetrotters of football at the time, which was the famous Galacticos team of Real Madrid. I'll say that I started, in the agency business in talent management a little bit by accident, like sometimes it happens. Of course, I was a lawyer, and I started actually to work with a lot of my clients, by the legal side, then evolve into the commercial side, and then by different circumstances, so I was also asked to take care of their sports side. Of course, it was an unbelievable experience. Was really interesting to see and to manage really the development of these big power brands, because at the time, of course, you had David Beckham, you had Luis Figo, and you had Ronaldo as the big power brands in football in terms of commercial development. Of course, that is also the advent or the early stage of digital exploitation in sport. And I still remember in the 2001, a discussion with, your former company, TWI AMG, about doing, the first website, for Ronaldo and Figo, right? So that was, basically the very early days. Of course, I think important to me, and we of course started also at the time to play with content, mostly branded content, because of course we had a big portfolio of commercial brands. We started as well to explore, very much, the more direct relationship with fans, because the truth is, on those days, relationship with fans and sports stars were very much long distance and not, very close. And I think basically for me was interesting at the time was realizing the massive power of sport, and mostly the massive power of football, the unique power of athletes, and definitely the big opportunity around this industry, which was at the time I consider it to be very obsolete, and maybe we still in that journey. But at the time, so basically I decided to retire from talent management at the end of 2006. So basically to really proceed a life mission or a life journey, which has been my life journey since then, which basically help sports transform itself and help really sports materializing their full potential. Not just from a financial point of view, but from a connectivity point of view, from a technology point of view, from an engagement point of view, because I think there is still a lot to do still today, many years after, in that area. But basically that has been, my life mission since then.
Fantastic. I think the industry has been fortunate to have you. As you quite rightly said, I was at IMG. I was their first hire in India in 1994. Worked for Peter Hutton, which was a great privilege, and I was 10 years with them. And lucky to meet Mr.
Hi,
McCormack.
Peter, if you're watching.
Yeah, hi Peter. If he's probably sleeping right now. But we met Mr. McCormack, and I think there was a significant trend. I think at that generation of lawyers going into commercial roles, which I think is a very good grounding, isn't it? I think Timo Lume, of course, at the IOC, he's a lawyer before he went in. But the one thing which when I first obviously met you and got to know you, I was Again, we mentioned Timo Lume. Timo speaks 7 languages. You speak 5 languages. Talk
Yeah,
us
correct.
through the importance of communication. It's a relationship-based business. That must have been a huge advantage for you.
Yes, I think there is certain, personality traits that, definitely help you in this business. I'll say that, first of all, honesty, transparency, professionalism. I think if you want to stay in this business for, long term, like, like I am, you need to make sure that you always, deliver, at highest, and basically you always deliver in a very professional and respectful way, right? I think honesty, transparency, avoidance of totally conflict of interests, it's absolutely mandatory, right? If you want to be in this business for long. I think then from a personality point of view, I think it's important to be, a good PR and basically, be a good relationship, maker. Because as you said, it's a business that lives in, in relationships. Is a business that also tends to have a short-term shift, right? Because again, it's a business that is always, moving at a very fast pace. So again, long-term is not necessarily a word that exists in the same context as in other businesses in the sports industry, and everything tends to be high rotation, high speed. So basically, I think to keep longevity in this industry, right? So you really need to be prepared to always, deliver, in all circumstances at all times. I think that's fundamentally important. I think, of course, having, knowledge of multiple cultures, understanding multiple languages and understanding different business perspectives and business traits in many different cultures and countries is fundamentally important, because I think sports, of course, it's a global industry. It's very different in different parts of the world, and basically you cannot have just one fit model that fits all, right? So you need to adapt, and you need to be always prepared to be flexible and to adapt to the circumstances in real time. So I think that's a fundamental piece, and advice as well for probably the young, hopeful, talents, that want to dedicate themselves to a sports career. I think that's probably some valuable, initial information that I can basically pass on my experience and give them that insight.
No, I mean, I think you're absolutely right on the transparency piece. But also, what struck me when we first met, I think you were at that time in FIFA, and of course, I'd known so much about you, but we never sort of met. But just the scale of projects that you look to see. You're talking about getting the industry, getting organizations to evolve. Whether it was the talent business or the sort of motorsport business, or then looking at FIFA as well. How do you visualize and how do you communicate the scale and pace of transformation that the industry faces today? How do you sort of convince that to people who've enjoyed 30 years of at least 10% year-on-year growth, which is a phenomenal amount of money?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, from a career point of view, right? I think if you are in football, for so many years, like I am, and mostly I've been doing so many different things in football. I think, I was, of course, an agent. I was a marketeer. I was a digital guy. I was a commercial guy. I was always a C-level executive, so managing, the difficulty of the day-to-day of a club. I help leagues. I help, players. So I help federation. So again, I think probably the only thing I didn't do was playing football. So because that's not something I'm very good at. I'm a good football manager, player. So, but basically, I'll say that for me and for anyone that like me has been dedicating so much of his life to this sport and has so much love and so much passion for this sport, I think it's a trademark in your career if you also dedicate some of your time and have an opportunity to work for FIFA, right? So I think that's kind of, I'll say the holy grail. So in football, and I was very, very thankful, for having that experience, because it was generally, for me, a career trademark. Of course, and it's not just FIFA, but when you look at football overall as an industry, I think has been for many years, being a very fortunate industry, right? Because, you basically have very stable, revenue streams, which in a way tend to be indirect. So as you know, so again, basically, when a broadcaster pays a big check, to a confederation or to, a league or to a club, basically, you basically having a risk-free business, right? If you are, the rights holder. And this, of course, has been, a trait of the industry for many, many years. Again, I'll say always that for the last 30 years, you probably have this, holy trinity, made between the most important rights holders, the most important, media companies and the most important commercial partners that basically create a model that works, right? And in a way also that has been good for the fan, right? Because again, this amount of income and revenue that comes to the industry allows, basically more traditional income streams like ticketing and hospitality, merchandising, to be, let's say, less costly to the fan, right? So it's important. Now, the big issue of the industry has been, okay, how can you shift? How can you move? And how can you adapt into a world that necessarily, the long-term stability is no longer there, and even the short-term stability, let's say. Again, I've been for many years sometimes an aggressive voice, because sometimes you need to be aggressive because it looks like sometimes the industry doesn't want to listen about the dangers, of being too comfortable with the current model that runs the industry, because it's a model that is highly volatile. And unfortunately, COVID, brought us a reality check, right? So on that, conception, and as unfortunately we all have all seen, an industry that seemed to be, totally, fully protected about any kind of cataclysm that could happen, suddenly, became very volatile publicly, right? So recently, of course, CCA, which has been doing as well a tremendous work, and FIFA have been publishing a lot of information that, stands by, the amount of lost revenue that every league, all the football family have took, over the last year. And unfortunately, this current season and this current financial year for many football organizations doesn't, look to be still a normal year, right? So I think there is a strong chance that, some revenue, diminish will still happen. So when you are exposed to this kind of circumstances is not easy, right? And from, wherever you are, UEFA, wherever you're FIFA, wherever you are the Premier League, of course, you've been trying to get a model that, is more open, also privileges, also a new fan base, which basically is a younger fan base, which, of course, also giving another note about ECA just recently published a very interesting report on the shifting, of fan behaviors and, in the football industry, right? And many things that we've been saying for many years, now we have data that can prove, right? That, that fans, like more than one club, that basically fans are not anymore, so automatically converted into football the way they used to be. They don't play so much, on the pitch. They play much more virtually today. And it's very difficult to get, on for a young kid that today has a very, very small, available time to give to you. So it's very difficult to basically engage with him and engage with him in the duration of the show that we are presenting, right? So there's a lot of, difficulties ahead. But I'll say that for every big rights holder at the moment, it's a crossroad, right? Because, of course, for many years, all of us, we've been trying to develop a new effort, in terms of creating a new avenue for digital monetization, right? So because we know that the linear business is not going to last forever, right? So, and digital, of course, has been an amazing tool for engagement, for fan connection, for getting all the content out there in real time, but also allowing fans to have a voice, which is a very important piece, I think, of today's ecosystem. It's much more democratic. Thank God, but it's not easy still to monetize, right? And I think one of the interesting things I think we're going to see this year in many of the tenders of leagues and other important rights holders in the football industry it's many of them coming with much more alternative tendering process, right? So because as we know, exclusivity has still been dominant, and basically you try to sell a package that fits all channels and all distribution ways. And I think now more and more we're going to start to see a segmentation, of distribution, right? So again, I clearly see a lot of these tenders trying to find additional partners that only explore a digital, channel rather than just, linear. And so you'll try to find ways to increase the value, but also, spread the risk, right? Which is very important. But I think it's still not an easy message. And also I'm going to say it's not easy for a big, rights holder to take these kind of decisions because, you need the resources, right? Okay, if you look at, the dimension of FIFA has to sustain, the entire football family, right? So 211 federations, all the confederations. So, and has to support, the development of football around the world. UEFA the same on their area of jurisdiction. Right, so a league has to sustain, these 20 clubs or 18 clubs, right? So, and if the league cannot really find, the level of resources that normally finds, all the clubs are going to be in a very difficult situation, right? And then players will be in a very difficult situation. So it's like a big snowball. And this is also the important, crossroads we are at the moment. And also we need to give a little bit of time for this current generation of leaders to try to find, these new ways, right? And to integrate these new ways on a dynamic that they can understand and they can be comfortable with.
It's fascinating. You covered so much ground, and in terms of it requires patience, but at the same time a sense of urgency. It's a difficult balance.
Yes,
you've got to have patience. Yes, yet you've got to have urgency. It's a difficult balance.
Yeah.
Interesting. And you talked about the democratic process. You talked about fans' voices needing to be heard. I was really intrigued and curious actually about your current, I guess, corporate responsibility, which is as group CEO of 11 Sports. And I think it was a month ago that you announced a sort of 2.0, the next avatar of the business. I won't even call it a channel. It's a different business. I think the two strands which stood out for me was women's sport and perhaps gaming stroke esports. Tell us more about that, because it's a very interesting take. I think it's a very required take. But what's been the thinking around that?
Yeah, I think the thinking around that is a consequence of the modern, era that we live, right? I think today, of course, premium, what traditionally we call premium, sports and premium football, right? The big five leagues, World Cup, Men's World Cup, the Men's Euro Cup. I think that's still a massive audience, right? So, but again, there is today other forms of the sport that I believe can be built into future new premium, right? So, and when you look at all the advent of second tier football, if you look at many businesses today that have been showcasing for the first time what is happening on the amateur leagues, what is happening on the semi-professional leagues, what is happening, like we are doing for many years, for instance, with the Italian Serie C, the third division, where today we have a very, successful and very interesting, subscription-based model. With the kind of content that the industry believe many years for many years that will not be monetizable and will not be engaging enough. There will not be an audience for it, right? And I think definitely we can prove today there is an audience for it, and there's an audience that is very interested, is very loyal, is very connected, and is actually is willing to pay to see the content they love. I'll say that that is a very important consequence of the world we live in, and I think you need to have the courage to once and for all prioritize this kind of audience and this kind of potential opportunities, and this is what we have done. I think the second angle is, of course, women's sports, not just women's football, but women's sports. And I've been a big supporter, of basically the development, of women's football for many years, because I believe that, it's important that once and for all we give the necessary prioritization, the necessary ammunition for that sport to grow at the scale it can grow. Right, because today we know that within football worldwide there is more young girls starting to play the sport than young boys, and that's a very important trend. We all know that it's a sport that has a massive potential and a massive opportunity, even commercially. So and also because also it connects with an audience that is eager to once and for all have a product and have a voice, right? And the product that they can engage, they can relate, and they can feel much more incentivized. And this is not just a female only audience, right? So it's also a male audience, right? So and I think going back to my previous life and my times in FIFA, I think the 2019 Women's World Cup was a massive trademark, to prove what you can do if you really have the courage to prioritize it and to give the minimum conditions, to sustain, a development. And I think FIFA, UEFA, many leagues have been doing a tremendous job over the last years. I think other federations and other sports have also done a tremendous job. Even if you look at motorsport with the W Series, if you look at tennis, for many years WTA has been doing a tremendous job in cycling, etc., etc. So I think definitely it's about time that a broadcaster once and for all tries to prioritize and take this kind of content to a first line and have the courage to have the patience to create a product, to invest on it, to give the scale that it needs, right? Because if people cannot see it, if people cannot really consume that content at scale, it will never happen, right? And it will never develop to the potential it can develop. And this is something that definitely we want to change, even if we are a small broadcaster, right? Because let's face it, at 11 we are not a massive global company, right? We are, independent business, but, you need to have the courage. And I hope that with this step that we are taking, we can also incentivize other organizations to do the same, because that's also very much part of also our remit. I'll say the third angle is, of course, esports, and of course we all know about the advent of esports as a massive, piece of, entertainment, but also, as a much, engaging area sometimes for the younger audiences, and basically that sometimes is interfering with the sports capability of attracting that young audience into their own ecosystem. But I think, one point that we are trying, really to take as a priority is when traditional, sports organizations are trying to do esports, right? Because we believe there is once and for all as well an opportunity to give some prioritization to that piece, because we believe, first of all, that every sports organization needs to have a gaming, strategy and need to have a game, right? So, and I believe that, many organizations already start to wake up. Unfortunately, a lot of times that wake up is not a strategic wake up, is a more tactical. I think, during COVID, first wave, we all saw, many sports organizations, because they had nothing else to show, really investing seriously for the first time, and prioritizing, esports and their gaming, activities. Many of those organizations now, went back to put that kind of activities in a secondary role, which I think is a mistake, right? And so we believe there is an opportunity for building, an ecosystem that really prioritizes this kind of, content, and that's what we are also trying to do, with our new strategy. Again, it's a 5-year strategy, right? So we need to go step by step. But again, we're very convinced that this is the right way for us. And it doesn't mean that we stop investing in the premium business, in our country by country business, like we have been doing until now. But it's just, basically another layer and another angle, that we give, in terms of our business, that we believe will generate a lot of traction for us.
It's fascinating. I think it's from what I'm taking away from what you've just said is that there seem to be 2 or 3 different types of trends which are coming together. Gaming and sport, whether it's esports or whether it's fantasy, because gaming is a very large concept. Betting, of course. I think cost of production, cost of distribution, cost of access, that seems to be coming down as well quite a lot. And I think new segments who want to be heard, as you said, Serie C, or it's the women's game, as the case might be. From a creative angle, how do you visualize telling a story? Because there are different people with different creative needs. And it's kind of it's quite different. We have a 10-year-old daughter who's mad about basketball, and guess what? She supports the Raptors because she was 9 when the Raptors won, and it's a Canadian team, and it's pretty phenomenal. So talk to us about the creative storytelling process, and how does that sort of vary? How do you visualize that?
Yeah, I think that piece is fundamental, right? So, and I think today we have a massive interest from different audiences if the storytelling is right, right? But again, the old days that you have one single product distributed to every kind of potential audience, those days are over, right? If somebody still did not realize that, so it's a good wake up call. But I think that more than anything, you need to have, let's say, the on one side the studio content creation capability, right? So you need to have basically, not just your own capability, but you also need to be able to attract, from the world we live in today, all these co-creation actors, right? So basically, the co-creators today are a very important part of any strategy, to really define the right storytelling and the right experience for every end user, right? But again, personalization is absolutely key, but also real-time capability to personalize is mandatory, right? Because if you just try to do something and then a week after you're trying to go and change it, that's probably too late, right? On the world we live in today. Now, the second piece that is absolutely fundamental is data, right? And the knowledge about your audience and what that audience want, why they are connecting with you, right? So the old days that, okay, and picking up now football example, that people believe that the 90 minutes, package will basically, be seen by everyone, right? So, and having
Good luck.
basically no interest about knowing, that audience, those days are gone as well. But, the fundamental piece, and this is, one of the biggest, challenges that businesses like us and the Zone, for instance, have, right? When we are competing with data companies that were organically born as data companies, like the cases of Facebook or Amazon, for them, it's just a natural organic extension, right? They have the data, right? So still today, I'm convinced Facebook is the big data company in football worldwide, right? Because they're definitely, the company that has more data and more, direct real-time relationships with football fans, rather than, any football club or any federation, any league, right? And
Yeah.
this is not, anything that they did on purpose. It's just, basically a natural development of a business that always have privilege, this direct access and direct relationship with their users,
Yeah.
since scratch, it has been like that. So of course, we as broadcasters that are more digital, more innovative, we of course have been putting data at the center for many years. But if you look even, for instance, what the Zone have been trying to build, and they built quite a considerable database over the last years, is a titanic effort, right? Because it's easier for Amazon or Facebook to do it, right? You just, you just basically, drive data insights from one side to the other, and you readapt to what you need. Again, the transactional piece, which I think is fundamental, right? Amazon has it, right? So they don't need to invent anything. They don't need to be building other elements of their offer. They have it, right? And of course, when they negotiate some, sports rights, their mathematics and their, consideration is totally different than a company like us, right? So, but of course, we are trying to do now what we call a massive process of reverse engineering, because we're also trying to become a data company, right? So, and the Zone is trying to become a data company, right? Of course, you need time and you need, a lot of investment to be able to build that perspective, but that is fundamentally essential, right? If you want to still stay as an actor, in this ecosystem and this industry for many years, because if you don't have, in the next years, if you don't really once and for all understand your audience, you're going to fail.
Absolutely. It's I think in the DAZN story, very few people realize that the group actually had access to Warner Music for a long time, and that sort of helped them
Yes. Yeah.
understand short form content and the users as well. Louise, I hate to say this, but we are down to our last 30 seconds. The last half an hour has been great fun. I'm going to ask Jasper for a bit more time next time. But thanks ever so much. And I'm glad we
Yeah.
got you to
Thank you.
speak, and hopefully we'll get you to Singapore sometime and sometime soon. But thank you very much again.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sumis. It was a pleasure being here, and to all people that watch us. Thank you so much, and thank you very much as well for the organization. It's been fantastic, and this is a great event for Singapore, one of my preferred locations so in the world. And good luck for everyone, and it was a pleasure being here today.
Thank you, Luis. Go well and stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye, Unmish. Bye bye.